Calvin Morris, and I'm here today to talk to you about Doctor Who, World Enough and Time. Now this episode is the penultimate episode to the finale of this season of Doctor Who, and I'm going to start off by saying that this episode was odd for me. It was odd for a number of reasons, but the main reason is that the episode itself didn't really fall flat, but I kind of read into it right the way throughout the episode. I knew what was coming, I knew what was next, and this is a problem that I feel was the BBC were responsible for this episode not quite getting there. And that's because it's the way they promoted the season. And the way they promoted it, they kind of blew all the surprises early on. And that wasn't good. That wasn't good, because had you not known everything that this season was building to, this episode would have been like, wow, go for it. You could say, you know, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have watched sort of the previews and things like that, but the way they promoted it, the way they sold each preview was, they kind of spoiled their own stuff. They, at the start of the season, they put out pictures, they put out trailers, and you knew who was in the episodes. You knew what the episodes were going to be, and they really shouldn't have done that. They really shouldn't have. You know, if spoilery information had got out there about John Sim returning to the series and things like that, if the BBC hadn't confirmed it, it would have just been rumourville, and it would have just been, you know, speculation on the part of the fans. And if it does happen, it's like, yes, great. But because they confirmed it at the start of the season, we were literally watching this episode waiting for really the last 5 minutes. And in some way it detracted from the episode. In some way it was like, come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Come on, get on with it. Oh, there it is. And that's a disservice to this episode. Because I think that what they were trying to do with this episode was tell an interesting story. That I think that they were trying to do something interesting with a companion. I think that they were trying to do something interesting with Missy. I think they were trying to bring back some of the things that had linked this series to previous seasons, in the fact that, you know, it was the 10th Planet episode with the Mondasian Cybermen that caused William Hartnell's first regeneration, and in this was mirroring that, in that these Cybermen were going to be the reason why this cycle of the Doctor, this first regeneration of his new cycle, was going to be regenerate. It was a genuinely good story. It really was, and it's just that they blew all the surprises from before we even saw the first episode. And that's on the BBC. That's not on the writing, that's not on the Doctor Who production or anything like that. That is literally down to the BBC and the way they promoted it. I wish that when they do the next time thing at the end of the episode, that they would shift that to the other side of the credits, whereby you've got time to switch it off or whatever. And the other thing as well is that even if they did that, I'm probably still going to watch it anyway, okay, so that's on me. But I wish they wouldn't put so much spoilery stuff in there. And I realise they're trying to create intrigue to draw the audience back in next week to make something interesting. But this entire episode hinged on those surprises, and it literally got to the last 5 minutes and then just blew one surprise after the other. And if you had gone into this episode not knowing any of that, this would have probably been knock your socks off material. But as it was, I did enjoy it. I thought it was good. Again, I like the fact that they decided to start the episode off the way they did. I think that creates more intrigue in the fact that what we see in appears to be the Doctor regenerating, and we know they faked us out with that before, but I don't think it's that this time. I think this time this is the genuine thing. So yeah, let's talk about the actual story then. So they test driving Missy by giving her own adventure, by getting her to sort of take the part of the Doctor, as it were, and sort of let's see what she can do. Let's see what she can. Let's see how she can perform, and I'm not really that keen on the idea of. I get that the Doctor is sort of trying to fill this character with hope, so that it's easier for the character to rehabilitate. But would you trust Missy? Let's be fair. Would you trust her? If you're that smart, would you actually? And I realise that hope means that you've got to take a leap of faith, but in this case, I'm really not sold on the idea of letting her go off and do her own thing. Not all in this episode really didn't play much. There really wasn't a lot there. There are these kooky gags that they like to throw in to Nardole. In this episode it's like, oh, I remember being blue. And I think we're past that now. I think Nardole plays a more important role than just being... I did like the fact that Missy called them out on it, your comic relief and your exposition, which was kind of nice. It's one of those sort of meta things that they do with the show that they can get away with, but it was very on the nose, and that didn't bother me. I had a good chuckle at it, because fans tend to be sort of smarten up to these sort of things, into the way that the stories are written and everything. The ship itself, the 400-mile long ship that's 100 miles wide, that's a country. That's a whole country. When you work on how many decks there are at that span, that's a country in itself. So lots and lots and lots of Cybermen to come, hopefully. I like the fact that what they done with Bill from the start, which was the whole instead of doing the Bill's kidnapped and then she's murdered and then revived, they done it in sort of the reverse form. So they kill her, they kidnap her, they revive her, which is a good play. I think, because you're really not sure what's coming next. And again, if you hadn't known what this episode was leading to, you probably would be a little more shocked about it. I had a feeling of the episode where they went to Torchwood and this happened to the head of Torchwood. The whole I did my duty. I served my queen and that sort of thing. I was very reminiscent of that. I'm not really sold on the idea that the Master is somehow involved in the genesis of the Cybermen. That didn't quite sit well with me. I realise he's not directly responsible, but you could argue that he probably manipulated something along the way. I'm much more keen on the idea that the story is about these Cybermen were created out of necessity, and that it was just a good idea that they needed to do, something that they had to do to survive, and it got out of hand. I'm much more keen on that idea, and it's kind of the problem I have with prequels anyway, is that sometimes when you get a prequel story, for me it robs you of the mystique of how did this happen, where did this come from, and sometimes it's best not to answer those questions. This done a good job of answering those questions and still making it intriguing, but I still think I wish that they hadn't done it. I would have much preferred these Cybermen to just show up. Another thing as well that I wouldn't have done with this episode is the whole stompy sound effect for him, because I don't believe that works with these particular Cybermen. I like these Cybermen creepy, and these Cybermen are really bloody creepy. You know, they're big, they're large, they have this weird gauze face. I like the explanation for the gauze face, that it's some sort of like hospital bandage. I do like that. But when they started doing the stompy sound effect, where it sounds like a load of staple guns being drilled into wood, that didn't quite work. I thought that was a little bit overdone. But saying that, I still enjoyed this episode. I wish the surprises hadn't been blown, and I'm looking forward to next week now, because all the surprises that were blown are now out of the way. So that's the real positive from this episode, is that we don't know what's going to happen next week. We simply don't know. Even if you watch the preview, you know that the Doctor's going to get involved somehow. You know that things are going to kick off. But now we have surprises left. For me, I think I would have blown the whole John Sim Master and the Mondasian Cybermen earlier in the episode, so that when it does get the cliffhanger, you've got a lot more play for next week. But saying that, we still really don't know what next week is going to be all about. And as a part of writing, I think they've done a good job. Like I said, I like the ship. I like the idea that these sort of decks are hundreds of miles across. That I don't know how tall the ceiling is. I'm guessing 1/4 of a mile, maybe taller. I like the fact that they built sort of cities inside the ship, so it was broken down into different districts and things like that. So yeah, I think that they've done a good job wrapping up this series, and I think that it does hinge all on next week. If they nail it next week, this will be a fantastic series for Peter Capaldi's Doctor. An absolutely fantastic series, but they have to nail it next week. It is the linchpin that is going to make this entire series work. So anyway, that's what I thought of Doctor Who World Enough and Time. There's not really a lot more to add. There was I liked the setting for the hospital. It made it creepy. It kind of reminded me of The Empty Child, the similar sort of lighting setups and things like that. So there was a lot in this episode that was very reminiscent of what Stephen Moffat has brought to Doctor Who since he stepped on board. And I think, after seeing this episode, I think what we have seen from Stephen Moffat is somebody who has let it go, has just gone, I'm just going to play. At the start I tried setting things up, and I tried pushing things and setting up long story arcs and things like this. This series, the story arc has been really in the background, and it's been about Missy in the vault and everything like that. But really and truly, he's just played. He's just gone, let's do this. Let's see what happens in this episode if we do this instead. Let's have fun doing this one. And this series really has been a lot of fun. So it does hinge on next week. But if they nail it, we've got a really good season of Doctor Who again. Anyway, that's going to do it from me. Let me know what you thought of this episode of Doctor Who. And until next time, I'll see you later, guys.